Once you've completed your first cast on, knit about 1 inch or 1 1/4 of ribbing, then done another inch of stockinette, you're going to break the yarn, leaving a 6 to 8 inch tail. Remember, the tails have to be woven in, so it's going to be convenient to have a slightly longer one. And you're going to slide it onto a stitch holder. I particularly like this style of stitch holder that has almost like a short double-pointed needle inside. Makes it easy to slide it off from either end, so you don't have to think about that. And you're just going to put it aside, and you're ready to start another cast on. We're going to do another cast on, and it's going to be basically what I call an forward and reverse cast on. I've done this in color, and you might have seen it in color, but let's think about doing it in solid color yarn with a standard long tail cast on. So we're going to measure out some yarn, and we're going to pick up our needle. Once again, we're going to hold the yarn in our hands, grabbing hold of it, using our finger and our thumb to open it up. I then stick the needle into the space between my finger and thumb, lift and roll forward. Some people lift and roll backwards. 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Perhaps the other is more logical, because I tend to knit combination knitting, and it sometimes shows up. Now here's how we're going to do the forward and reverse. Our first stitch is going to be pretty easy. It's going to be a standard long tail. No problem with that. Our second stitch is going to be a reverse long tail. And reverse long tail implies going in to the loop created by the index finger. Okay, so we have, instead of going into the loop by the thumb, we're going to go into the loop by the index finger. Obviously, once we do that, we're going to pick up the yarn by the thumb, bring it back out the loop, and close it. Alright, that's our first, and then we're going to do a standard, followed by a reverse. Come into the space between the middle finger and the index finger, pick up the yarn. That enters us into the loop. You can see the crossed yarns here. Pick up the thread with the thumb, come back out the loop, tighten it up. A standard long tail. Now, by doing this reverse, one of the things that's happening is, and you'll see this in just a moment, is we're going to come in and think about what we're doing. Our thumb yarn is towards the front of the body, which means that when we do a long tail this way, we are having our purl stitch on the front of the yarn, which means we're doing a knit with the yarn in back, and then a purl with the thumb yarn in front. Look at that again. This creates a knit because the yarn that we're making the stitch with is in back, and this creates a purl because the yarn we're making the stitch with is in front. And what an open and close cast on does is an open and close cast on, and I'm trying to get the exact focal length, oh there, come up close, creates knits and purls on the front of your work, and obviously knits and purls on the back of your work. Now, you're going to ask the question, ooh, that's cool, can I make 1, 2, and make 1, 2? And the answer is, of course you can. You can start your very first row with a long tail cast on in ribbing. You can have ribbing right from the very beginning. Now, a second thing happens with this cast on. All long tail cast ons, if worked too tight, can be too tight. But because you're changing, in effect, this is our base row yarn. Now this is our base row yarn, and that's our stitch yarn, and this is our base row yarn, and this is our stitch yarn. That means every other stitch is made with this yarn, and every other stitch is made with that yarn, which means it's going to balance out a little better. A lot of times people will say for a looser cast on to cast on over 2 needles. But if you cast on over 2 needles, all you're doing is making the standard index finger stitch big and not the thumb stitch big. With this cast on, if you cast on if you find your cast on tight, if you cast on over 2 needles, 2 stitches are going to be made with this yarn, 2 stitches this yarn, and all those stitches are going to be on the needle, creating a little bit more ease than you have in another cast on. So this kind of ribbed cast on is a useful trick to consider. It's not that difficult to learn how to do the reverse cast on compared to some of the other skills you're going to master, but bring the needle to the back of the hand, almost on the knuckle of the middle finger here that's bent, and bring it into the loop of yarn. Pick up your stitch, come back out the loop, and tighten it up. So there's another cast on that you can consider as a variation of your basic long tail.